What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Celtics Daily with me, Mike Zakarian. And today we finally can talk about some playoff basketball. And luckily, it was a happy Easter at the Garden as the Celtics take a 1-0 lead over the Orlando Magic, winning the game 103 and holding the Orlando Magic to only 86 points. It was a little dicey there in the first half. Celtics got off to a pretty good start, up 26-18 at the end of one, but then the Magic outscored the Celtics 31-22 in the second quarter, taking the lead into halftime. And it was very interesting to see how the Celtics were going to come out. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, clearly a little bit of rust after not playing for a week or so. The shot was not falling for either of them, but thankfully, the lucky Peyton Pritchard and Derek White were cooking for the Celtics and led the way. Derek White had one of the more efficient three-point shooting games that we've seen from a Celtic in playoff basketball in quite some time. White went for 30 points, going 7 for 12 from three, was critical the entire game. And then Peyton Pritchard off the bench came in, dropped, I believe, 11 in his first 4 minutes on the floor, finished the game with 19 points. But one of the stories of the game, Jason Tatum, who got hurt, a little dinged up. I don't even want to say hurt. A little dinged up late in the game when he went up for a dunk. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and Wendell Carter Jr. converged on him. KCP ends up getting called for a flagrant foul, which I don't know. I mean, it was definitely a tough contest, but it's playoff basketball. It seemed just like it should have been 2 shots. Tatum went up, missed both free throws after laying on the ground for what felt like 45 minutes. Got a little bit concerned that it might be a problem, but then Tatum went out there, scooped up a few points there late in the fourth quarter to kind of make us feel a little bit better, because when you look at Tatum's line, if you just see 17 points, 14 rebounds, not so bad, right? Well, he went 8 for 22 from the field and 1 for 8 from three. Not great, Bob. However, if you look at what Tatum did, again, 8 for 22, and then you had Jaylen Brown, 6 for 14. Our two best players, I'm going to try to do math in real time, that's 14 for 36 from the field. That's not what you're looking for. However, the Celtics still won pretty comfortably with their two best players underperforming a little bit, so maybe it's not the end of the world. One thing to note there for Orlando, and this is something we talked about in our previous videos, right? We thought Paolo Banchero was going to go absolutely nuts. We thought Franz Wagner would have a good game, and then it would probably be nothing from anyone else on the Magic, and that's almost exactly what happened. Paolo proved that he is going to be, I don't know, an MVP caliber type player as we get deeper into his career, and if Orlando ever gets any help from the guard position, they are going to be a much scarier team. But Paolo went for 36 points, 11 boards, 4 dimes, had a steal and a block, went 4 for 7 from 3, 14 for 27 from the field. He was great. Franz Wagner had 23 and 5. He slowed down a little bit in the second half, but was hot in the first half. So those two combined for 59 of the 86 points. The next highest scoring Orlando Magic, well, it was none other than Jonathan Isaac, who only had 7 points. That's right. He had 7. KCP had 6. You got 4 from Wendell Carter Jr. Corey Joseph was out there getting some cardio. He wasn't doing too much offensively. So that's kind of going to be the blueprint, I think, moving forward for this Celtics Magic series, is you're just going to be seeing Paolo and Franz look like they're unbeatable, except for the fact that the Orlando Magic are very beatable, because that is all they have right now. Now, they still defend the heck out of the ball. They did a really good job on the defensive end. We already went over Tatum and Brown's numbers, so you know what that looks like. So it's still going to be mucked up a little bit on the defensive end, but good stuff for the Boston Celtics, taking care of business in game one. And listen, they got a little bit of a scare, right? They had a week off. Orlando came in, tried to punch them in the mouth a little bit in the second quarter, but hey, they stood strong. They get the win. Now they don't have to play again until Wednesday. They get to chill for a little bit, watch some other teams play some basketball, and then they will come back on Wednesday for game 2. One thing that we do need to talk about, though, and I'm very proud of the title for this, Let's Knee Honest. That's right. We need to talk about Jaylen Brown's knee, because, listen, we already talked about Jaylen's shooting struggles in game 1, which wasn't overly concerning. I actually thought he looked somewhat aggressive, but it was a lot of below the rim activity that we saw from Jaylen. Not really the high flying, burst. He did have a strong dunk in the second half that made you think, okay, maybe he's still got some oomph in him. But the first step seemed a little bit slower, and I just keep going back to that quote that he gave the media about a week or two ago about how he was studying Paul Pierce tape, which again, that's not a problem. But I just think about Jaylen Brown being this high energy, high octane offensive weapon. And Paul Pierce, again, offensive Hall of of Famer, right? But just, plays a little bit slower, a little bit more methodical. And I think if the Celtics are really going to be poised for a repeat title performance, they're going to need Jaylen Brown to maybe not be the best player on the Celtics team. He might not have to win Eastern Conference Finals MVP, NBA Finals MVP, but he's got to be up there. He's got to be himself. And I think if Brown is only going to be like 70, 80% or whatever, you're going to need Derek White to go 7 for 12 from 3 night in and night out if that's the case. I don't think I'm full panic button pressing the alarm. I think Jaylen's going to be fine. Again, first game that he's played in a while. I think the Celtics having a nice little lead here going into the fourth quarter where the last 5 minutes of the game, they got to take JB out. He could rest. So hopefully this first round just allows him to get his sea legs under him again, shake some of the rust off, hopefully start to build some strength in the knee. It's nice that they have a couple of days off between games. He's not logging massive minutes. So hopefully it's not a huge concern, but I will say a little bit nervous. I am a little bit nervous about that Jaylen Brown knee, not for the first round, but just as we get a little bit deeper into the series. I think it could be or not this series, into the next series and the series after that could be a little bit of a problem. But maybe we're focusing a little too much on what the future is, and we should just look ahead to Game 2. Again, that's going to be on Wednesday. Game 2 is also in Boston. The Celtics have an opportunity to go up 2-0. The two things that I'm looking forward to the most is really Tatum's shooting. Tatum felt a little sloppy is almost the only word that I can think of. One thing I want to give him a little bit of credit for, though, I think with the really great players, they find ways to impact the game when their normal thing isn't working. So Tatum's shot wasn't falling. He wasn't really attacking the rim either, was settling for a lot of these mid-range jump shots, these tough fadeaways. I know he had Corey Joseph on him a couple of times and would just go to a fadeaway. I just kind of want to see him do a step through and attack the rim just because of how much more physical and stronger he is than some of the guys that were covering him. But again, the shot wasn't falling. He wasn't hitting from 3, wasn't hitting from mid-range, wasn't attacking the rim. So what he did instead was rebound the hell out of the ball and play defense. He had 14 boards, 4 dimes, right? A steal and a block. So he's continued to impact the game in other ways. But for me personally, I'm looking to see how Tatum and Jaylen Brown respond in Game 2 to a subpar offensive performance, because I do think that is asking a lot of Derek White and Peyton Pritchard to combine for 49 points. Other thing we should point out here is Kristaps Porzingis only took 8 shots the entire game. Went 1 for 8 from the field, 3 for 4 from the free throw line, finished with 5.6 boards. He did have 4 steals, which was nice. He was great getting in the passing lanes. A lot of deflections for Porzingis. But I would like to think that he would be able to establish himself a little bit more offensively. Credit to Orlando. They threw Franz Wagner on him early, which kind of eliminates one of the special things about Porzingis is when you put it big on him, he's like, all right, let me take you behind the three-point line. Let me introduce you to my range. Well, Franz Wagner is somebody that can defend that a little bit better than a normal big. So if that's how they're going to defend Porzingis, maybe he establishes himself on the block a little bit more and brings some pain to Franz, but that is not what we saw in Game 1. But again, you can nitpick the Celtics' performance if you want, but for them to win comfortably against Orlando in Game 1, knowing that Tatum and Brown, let's throw Porzingis' numbers in, right? So Tatum 8 for 22, Brown 6 for 14, and then Porzingis 1 for 8. Goodness, that is not a good offensive performance. So to get that W early on, get the first win under, right? You don't have to worry you drop Game 1 and then all of a sudden Stephen A. Smith, oh, we sure Boston's that good. All of a sudden people start screaming, right? You get to avoid that. Relax, get healthy, head into Game 2. Which again will be on Wednesday. But let's quickly just take a look at some of the other stuff that happened this weekend, specifically in the Eastern Conference. I thought both of those matchups were pretty interesting. The Indiana Pacers took on the Milwaukee Bucks in the very first playoff game of the weekend, and it was spicy. The Pacers came in and just punched Milwaukee in the mouth, took a W, were comfortably in the lead the entire game. Andrew Nembhard was a menace. It was interesting seeing the way they defended Milwaukee. Again, they didn't have a ton of guard play, so with Damian Lillard not playing, so it's you don't want to overrate it too much, but thinking about what it would look like the Pacers to take on the Celtics, they do have a lot of guard and long wing defenders, somebody like Aaron Nesmith, who they can throw at these Celtics guards who were so efficient tonight. But they took care of business against Milwaukee. There's rumors that Damian Lillard's going to be back for Game 2. My guess is Game 3, although he was already more involved than his teammate Kyle Kuzma in Game 1. Kyle Kuzma played 22 minutes and accrued 0 stats. Just got some cardio in. Started a cardio club. Kyle Kuzma captain of the club. Damian Lillard, though, did not play in the game, was wearing a nice sweater, received a technical foul because him and Tyrese Halliburton were getting into it. If you guys remember back to the NBA in-season cup, the very first one, where the Pacers knocked the Bucks out in Vegas in the semifinals, and Halliburton hit a big shot and then went to the wristwatch for the Dame time celebration. So there's some spiciness. So I hope Dame, one, is healthy and can come back and play, because that would be kind of fun. But to look at round 2, we could be having a battle of the Northeast corridor, taking the Amtrak back and forth between New York City and Boston, because the Knicks looked like they were struggling a little bit in the game 1 in the Garden, where the Pistons were up 8 in the fourth quarter, and then the Knicks said, hey, what if you don't score again for the rest of the game? Knicks went on a crazy run. Brunson looked really dinged up. You want to talk about Jaylen Brown's knee? Brunson looked like he rolled an ankle 4 different times, was limping all over the place, and yet somehow still finished with 34 points. Yet Karl Anthony Towns do a weird celebration where he's like, he made a nice pass, did like the glasses, like the seeing eye glasses, but then he closed one of them, so like he was winking. I don't know what Karl Anthony Towns is doing, and I believe no one knows what he's doing. But it was a really impressive W, and it does feel like we're setting up for a second round of Boston and New York, which would be a lot of fun for me personally, since I am a Boston fan living in New York. Would be wonderful stuff. But it was great to have the playoffs underway. I'm excited for Game 2. What is the thing you are looking forward to the most from the Boston Celtics in Game 2 against the Orlando Magic on what I believe is Wednesday? I've said Wednesday confidently this entire video without double-checking to make sure it's not Tuesday. But I believe deep in my heart it's going to be Wednesday. So what are you looking forward to most? Is it Tatum knocking down some shots? Is it Jaylen Brown's knee? Or is it just Peyton Pritchard doing three-point stuff? Appreciate you guys tuning into the video. Do me a favor. Hit the subscribe, drop a like, leave a comment, do all of the things. Let's boost some engagement up in here. Thanks for watching.